by Edmond Paris. We are in chapter 24. I may not get all the way through chapter 24. It is a little bit long, but let's get started. Chapter 24, preparations for the Second World War. In 1919, the sons of Loloya reaped the bitter fruits of their criminal politics. France had not succumbed to the thorough bleeding. The Apostolic Empire, the Habsburgs, which they had encouraged to punish the Serbians, had disintegrated, liberating the Orthodox Slavs from the yoke of Rome. Russia, instead of coming back to the Roman fold, had become Marxist, anti-clerical, and officially atheistic. As for invincible Germany, it floundered in the chaos. But the proud nature of the company would never consider confessing a sin. When Benedict XV died in 1922, it was ready to start again on a new basis. Is it not all-powerful in Rome? Let us listen to M. Paris Dominique. The new Pope Pius XI, who is, according to some, a Jesuit, tries to patch things up. He asked the Jesuit father de Hergomany to go to Russia in an attempt to rally whatever is left of Catholicism, and especially to see what could be done. Vague and big hope to rally around the pontiff, the persecuted Orthodox world. In Rome, there are 39 ecclesiastical colleges whose foundation marks the dates of great offensives. Most of those counter-offensives were Jesuitical in their working and direction. Germanic College, 1552, English, 1578, Irish, 1628, reestablished in 1826, Scottish, 1600, North America, 1859, Canadian, 1888, Ethiopian, 1919, reconstituted in 1930. Pius XI created the Russian College, Pontifical Calico Rusio di S. Teresia del Bambino Gesù, and puts it under the Jesuits' care. They also look after the Oriental Institute, the Institute of St. John Damascus, the Polish College, and latter the Lithuanian College. Are these reminders of Father Passanino, Ivan the Terrible, and the false Dimitri? The second of the three great objectives during Ignatius's time takes first place. The Jesuits, once again, are the inspiring agents and performers in that great enterprise. In the defeat they just suffered, the sons of Loloya can see a glimmer of some hope. The Russian Revolution, by eliminating the Tsar, protector of the Orthodox Church, had it not decapitated the Great Revival and helped the penetration of the Roman Church? We must strike while the iron is hot. The famous Russicum is created, and its clandestine missionaries will take the good news to this schismatic country. 1 century after their expulsion by Tsar Alexander I, the Jesuits will again undertake the conquest of the Slav world. Since 1915, this general is Nault von Ledowski. From M. Pierre Dominique, again, some will say that I see Jesuits everywhere, but I am compelled to point out their presence and actions, to say that they were behind the monarchy of Alfonso XIII, whose confessor was Father Lopez, that when the Spanish monarchy was ended and their monasteries and colleges burned down, they were found again behind Gil Robles, then, when civil war broke out, behind Franco. In Portugal, they uphold Salazar. In Austria-Hungary, the Emperor Charles, who was dethroned 3 times. What part did they play in those attempts to regain the throne of Hungary? Who knows? They kept the seat warm, not knowing much for whom or what. Monsignor Scipio, Dolfos, and Schuschnigg are from their ranks. They dream for a while of a great Germany with a Catholic majority, to which the Austrians would necessarily belong. A modern version of the old 16th century alliance between the Wittelsbach and Habsburg. In Italy, they first support Don Sturzo, founder of the Popular Party, then Mussolini. The Jesuit father Tacchi Venturi, general secretary of the company, served as the middleman between Pius XI, whose confessors are fathers Alcidardi and Celebrano, Jesuits, and Mussolini. The Pope in February 1929, at the time of the Treaty of Latrine, Latrine, calls Mussolini, quote, the man whom Providence allowed us to meet, unquote. Rome does not condemn what is commonly called the, quote, Ethiopian aggression, unquote. And in 1940, the Vatican is still Mussolini's sincere friend. That was 1940. Quote, the Jesuits have their secret abode in it. From there, they survey the universal church with the cold and calculating eye of the politician, unquote. This is a perfect summary of the Jesuit activity between the two world wars. The secret abode of Loyola's sons is the political brain of the Vatican. The confessors of Pius XI are Jesuits. Those of his successor, Pius XII, will also be Jesuits and Germans for good measure. No matter if, because of it, the plot becomes evident, everything, it seems, is ready for revenge. But under the pontificate of Pius XI, it is the preparatory period. The Germanic secular arm, defeated, has dropped the sword. While waiting to put it back into its hands, we will prepare in Europe a field worth its future exploits, and first of all, stop the threatening rise of democracy. Italy will be the first field of action. There is a noisy socialist chief who gathers ex-servicemen around him. This man proclaims an apparently intransigent doctrine, but he is ambitious and lucid enough to realize how precarious his position is in spite of his extravagant boastings. Jesuit diplomacy will soon win him over to its side. M. Francisco Charles Rowe of the Institute, who was our, i.e., French ambassador to the Vatican at that time, says, quote, at the time when the future Deuce was only a simple deputy, Cardinal Gasperi, Secretary of State, had a secret interview with him. The fascist chief had immediately agreed that the Pope should exercise a temporal sovereignty over a part of Rome. When reporting to me about that interview, Cardinal Gasperi concluded, with this promise, I was sure that if this man came to power, we would succeed, unquote. Quote again, I will not mention his account of the negotiations between the secret agents of Pius XII and Mussolini, unquote. These secret agents, the main one being the Jesuit father Tacchi Venturi, fulfilled their mission extremely well. This is not surprising when we know that Father Tacchi Venturi was secretary of the Company of Jesus and Mussolini's confessor at the same time. Really. In fact, he was directed into this let's see, I don't even really know how to pronounce that word. Cajolery. I really don't know. Of the fascist chief and the general of his order, Hulk von Ledowski, as we are told by M. Gaston Gaillard. Quote, on the 16th of November, 1922, Parliament elected Mussolini by 306 votes to 116. In that meeting, one saw the Catholic group of Don Sturzo, supposedly Christian Democrat, voting unanimously for the first fascist government, unquote. 10 years later, the same maneuver brought about a similar result in Germany. The Catholic Zentrum of Monsignor Kass assured by its massive vote the dictatorship of Nazism. In fact, Italy had been, in 1922, the trial ground for the new formula of authoritarian conservatism, fascism dressed up when local circumstances demanded it, with some pseudo-socialism. From now on, all the efforts of the Vatican's Jesuits will tend to spread this, quote, doctrine, unquote, in Europe, and the ambiguity of which is typical of them. And I'm going to read that again. In fact, Italy had been, in 1922, the trial ground for the new formula of authoritarian conservatism, fascism dressed up when local circumstances demanded it, with some pseudo-socialism. From now on, all the efforts of the Vatican Jesuits will tend to spread this doctrine in Europe, and the ambiguity of which is typical of them. Even today, the collapse of Mussolini's regime, nor the defeat, nor the ruins have been enough to discredit to the eyes of Italy's Christian Democrats and the megalomaniac dictator imposed on their country by the Vatican. Disowned only outwardly, his prestige remains intact in the hearts of the clerics. The following could be read in the press, quote, we have decided visitors coming to Rome for the Olympic Games in 1960 will see the marble obelisk erected by Benito Mussolini to his own glory as it dominates from the banks of the Tiber and the Olympic Stadium. Wow. This memorial, 33 meters high, bears the inscription Mussolini Deus and is decorated with mosaics and inscriptions praising fascism. The phrase, long live the Deus, is repeated more than 100 times, and the slogan, quote, many enemies means much honor, unquote, several times as well. The monument has on either side marble blocks commemorating the main events of fascism, from the foundation of the publication Popolo d'Italia by Mussolini until the establishment of the short-lived fascist empire, and including the war in Ethiopia. The obelisk was to be crowned with a gigantic statue of Mussolini as a naked athlete, nearly 100 meters high. But the regime collapsed before this strange project could be realized. Quote, after a year of controversy, Signy government has just decided that the Deus's obelisk should stay, unquote. The war, the blood, which flowed profusely, the tears and the ruins do not matter. They are mere trifles, small spots on the monument erected to the glory of the man whom Providence allowed us to meet, as Pius XI described him. No shortcomings, mistakes, or crimes can erase his main merit, The fact that he reestablished the temporal power of the Pope, proclaimed Roman Catholicism as the religion of the state, and gave the clergy, through laws still being enforced, complete power over the life of the nation. It is to testify to this that Mussolini's obsolescence must stand in the heart of Rome for the benefit of foreign tourists looking at it admiringly or ironically, and in the hope of better times, which would allow the erection of the naked athlete, 100 meters high, symbolic champion of the Vatican. The Lateran Treaty, by which Mussolini showed his gratitude to the papacy, gave the Holy See, apart from the payment of 1,000, and that's 750 million liras, wow, the temporal sovereignty over the territory of Vatican City. Monsignor Cristatini, prelate of His Holiness, explains the significance of this event. Quote, "It is certain that the constitution of the Vatican City was a matter of prime importance in order to establish the papacy as a political power," unquote. We will not waste time during trying to conciliate this explicit confession with the phrase so often heard that the Roman Church is not involved in politics. We will only point out the unique position in the world of a state which is secular and sacred, of equivocal nature as well, and with the consequences of that position. What are the Jesuitical crafty tricks used by this power which, depending on circumstances, makes use of her temporal or spiritual character to be exempted from all the rules laid down by international laws? The nations themselves have lent their hands to this trickery, and by doing that, helped its penetration into their midst, the Trojan horse of clericalism. Let's see. The Pope seemed to identify himself too much with the dictators, wrote M. Francisco Charles Rowe, French ambassador to the Vatican. But could it be otherwise when the Holy See itself had raised these men to power? Mussolini, the prototype, was the inaugurator of that series of providential men, these sword bearers who would prepare the revenge for 1918. From Italy, where it prospered so well under the care of Jesuit Father Tacchi Venturi and his acolytes, fascism was soon to be exported to Germany. Quote, "Hitler receives his impetus from Mussolini. The ideal of the Nazi is the same as in Italy. Since Mussolini is at the head, all the sympathies are for Berlin." In 1923, his fascism merges with National Socialism. He becomes friends with Hitler, to whom he supplies arms and money, unquote. At that time, Monsignor Pacelli, future Pius XII, and then the Cura's best diplomat, is nuncio in Munich, capital of Catholic Bavaria. There, the star of the future German dictator starts to rise. He is also a Catholic, like his most important associates. Of that country, cradle of Nazism, M. Maurice Lapatori tells us, quote, "Its two enemies are called Protestantism and democracy," unquote. Perugia's anxiety is therefore understandable. Quote, "It is easy to guess what kind of special care the Vatican gives Bavaria, where Hitler's National Socialism recruits its strongest contingents," unquote. to take from heretic Perugia the control of the German secular arm and transform it to Catholic Bavaria. What a dream. Monsignor Pacelli puts all in his power to realize it, acting in concert with the chief of the Company of Jesus. Quote, after the other war, 1914 to 1918, the Jesuits' general, Hulk von Ledowoski, had conceived a vast plan, the creation with or without Emperor Habsburg of a federation of the Catholic nations in Central and Eastern Europe, Austria, Slovakia, Bohemia, Poland, Hungary, Croatia, and of course, Bavaria. This new Central Empire had to fight on two fronts: on the eastern side against the Soviet Union, on the western side against Perugia, Protestant Great Britain, and Republican rebellious France. At that time, Monsignor Pacelli, future Pius XII, was nuncio in Munich, then in Berlin, and an intimate friend of Cardinal Wallhaber, von Ledowoski's main collaborator. The Ledowoski plan was the dream of Pius XII's youth. But was it only a dream of youth? The Mittel Europa Hitler tried to organize was very similar to that plan, apart from the presence in that bloc of Lutheran Perugia, a not very dangerous minority, and the recognized zones of influence which maybe temporarily belong to Italy. In fact, it was the Ledowoski's plan, adapted to the needs of the time, which the Fuhrer was trying to realize under the patronage of the Holy See, with the help of Franz von Papen, secret chamberlain of the Pope, and the nuncio to Munich, then Berlin, Monsignor Pacelli. Very good, because I can't pronounce those words myself.
I wonder what it would taste like if I took one of these LaCroix and put that crystal light in it.
Might be good. I don't know, honey. M. Francisco Charles Rowe writes, quote, during the contemporary epoch, world politics never felt the Catholic intervention more than during the ministry of Monsignor Pacelli. We also read from M. Joseph Rovan, quote, now Catholic Bavaria is going to welcome and protect all those who sow trouble, all those Confederates and assassins of de la Saint Vahim. And I'm going to stop that there, brothers and sisters, because Richard's going to be home. The dogs are going to be going crazy. So let's just stop it there. I will finish that chapter tonight, though, here in a little bit. So keep your eyes on Jesus, brothers and sisters. Your nose in the book, which is the Word of God, and embed the Word of God upon the tablets of your hearts, so you and I will not sin against God or be deceived. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.